Welcome to Chat with Leaders. Our mission is to give resilient servant leaders a platform for sharing the inspiring things they're doing to lead their teams, customers, and themselves wisely. I'm Jeff Bond, Director of Client Services at AppBerry, and today's host. I'm joined by Jay Shaffer, Enterprise Technology Executive, Angel Investor, and Mentor in the Metro Atlanta technology community. Thanks for joining us, Jay.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Well, like I said, Jay Shaffer is an enterprise tech executive, angel investor, mentor. I've known him for some time. He's a great voice in the Atlanta technology scene. We're proud to have him. The Atlanta Technology Angels, which he's a board member of now, is an accredited angel investment firm that invests and supports startup and early stage high growth businesses in Atlanta and around Georgia. So it's an interesting
and the
perspective.
Southeast.
And the whole Southeast. Thank you for clarifying. And it's an interesting time to talk about this because it's April 2020, COVID-19. There's a lot of economic uncertainty, and talking about the types of companies that we invest in at early stages is certainly interesting. And prior to this, you've launched your own companies. You've been an entrepreneur. You co-founded VoiceQuilt, which created a platform to create unique, personalized keepsake gifts. And prior to that, you worked for 14 years at Sun Microsystems. So you've got an MBA at University of North Carolina. You haven't done much in your life, Jay.
Well, I've been a tech guy, and as we had talked before, technology was always changing. So those things are good, but you always have to be aware of what's going on in the future. So technology, one thing we used to say at Sun, if we're doing the same way a year from now, something's wrong, because things are going to change.
Change is the only constant, and you're certainly one that accepts change and that accepts it head on, and I'm inspired by that. So the point of this show, Jay, as I told you leading into it, is to give our guests a platform to share the inspiring things that they're doing in their leadership and any specific challenges that you're working to overcome and how you're overcoming them, and some of the principles that you're putting into practice to lead faithfully and experience success in any condition, but particularly now that we're in this unprecedented time that we're in.
Right.
You had kind of mentioned to me a little bit about remaining optimistic, which, there's being positive and being blind to what's going on, but there's also the remaining optimistic and putting things into practice. And you talked about looking back on 2020 and what will you tell your kids and grandkids about how you responded. Talk to me a little bit about that and what your vision is for what you would be communicating in the future.
Sure. Well, first thing is, right now we're in an emergency, and just like when you go on an airplane, the first thing the flight attendants tell you is put your oxygen mask on first before you try and help anybody else. So in the last few weeks, and nobody knows for sure, we're fighting a virus, but we're also fighting an information war, because the information can help us figure out the way out of this. So right now, the most important thing is put your oxygen mask on, make sure you don't get sick, and then your family, because I would hate to be a burden to my family or other people, or put a burden on the system. So that's the number one thing. Next thing is make sure your family and friends are taken care of. And then what we've been trying to do is support the people on the front line. We've donated money to feed workers, and there's certain local restaurants that support places in the area. We're trying to support them as well. So at this point in the early stages, it's hard to keep track of the time. 2 weeks has gone on to 5 weeks or more now, it seems like, but we're just trying to figure out when can we start to return to normal. But I am optimistic about we will return to normal, because that's what humans do. We adapt, and that we'll look back on 2020 and say to our kids or grandkids, you mean you didn't have that test where you swab your cheek or run something by your iPhone and they know the new virus that comes along and you're either susceptible or resistant? I think in the future that we'll have those types of tools. It may not be, next year or next 10 years, but who knows in the future. That's how I think they're going to be able to handle these types of things.
Well, your optimism comes through so authentically, and it always has. And that's what I really love about you, Jay. And you had talked to me the other day about extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. And you believe that leadership is leading by example and modeling the behavior. Talk to me a little bit about that leadership principle and how you put that into practice in the past
Uh,
and how you're putting that into practice now?
well, I think like a lot of people, the most important things are everybody's looking for that sense of accomplishment. And if it's things that you do yourself, I found that those types of rewards, you set the goal yourself and you achieve it, are much more fulfilling than ones where it's just some extrinsic thing. That's been my experience. I've had jobs like that in the past where the money wasn't the reason you were doing it. It's nice, but you did it for other reasons. Um, I'm a big growth mindset person. You know that your brains and your talent that you're born with are just the starting point. That's not all you're ever going to be. And then if you use hard work and dedication or determination, depending on which term you want to use, you can improve your skills. So I think that everybody has those same type of capabilities. No matter where you start, you have the capability to improve. And it's just up to you if you have the desire and determination to do it.
So very
And
real and inspiring words. And I would encourage anyone listening to rewind and listen back to what you just said, because it's absolutely
well,
true. And
well, the other thing I was going to say is I was always a fan of Winston Churchill too, and he always said that I'm an optimist because I don't see much use in being anything else. So, which I think we had talked earlier. You want to be Pollyanna, but an optimist is the right way to approach things. That we will get through this and learn. It's only a mistake if you don't learn from it, right?
right. And I believe that you inspire me in so many ways, and that, you study leadership and you study inspiration.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I speak with you, you have a wealth of knowledge, and I'm asking you to email me afterwards with
Uh,
these Winston Churchill quotes, or whoever else it is that you just recently read or heard some inspiration from. So I
right.
appreciate you sharing that with us. Talk to me a little bit about the investment community right now, and entrepreneurs. What kind of challenges are you seeing for those companies that are seeking investments? What advice would you have for entrepreneurs right now that are trying to build their companies from the ground up in light of everything going on?
Right. That's a great question, Jeff. I was very fortunate that as part of this Venture Deals program, it's an online course, and I'd be happy to share the information afterwards. Brad Feld, one of the founders of the group, has this Ask Me Anything about once a month, and we were able to listen to him, and he said that there's three types of companies right now. There's ones that are negatively impacted, travel, the cruise lines, anybody that involves going to work, those people are negatively impacted. There's the positive ones that are positively impacted, like the Zoom, of course, anything productivity tools, work from home, and telemedicine. There's been a lot of strides in telemedicine. And they said then there's that third group, which is hard to know. You don't know if you can get better or not. But to borrow another angel, Jason Calacanis says that fortunes are made in down markets and they're collected in up markets. So there's always going to be innovation, and now's as good a time as any to start. You have a lot of people have free time. They're not commuting right now, and you can come with ideas. And there's certainly problems that need solutions out there. So it's a good time to start. The appetite for investment risk may be dampened right now because, especially individual investors, the high net worth individuals aren't as high net worth as they were at the beginning of the year, so they may not be as may not have as much available to invest, but there's still the opportunities, and it's a process. That's the one thing that I've learned moving from the operations and production management side of the table to the investing side in this past year, that it's a process. The fundraising is just as important of the business as the other side. It's got its own, now's not the time to just sit in your hands. If you got ideas, keep working on it and talk to people and see.
Yeah, I believe inaction right now is certainly not the response. There's actions and reactions, and certainly we're very reactive to a time that we never saw coming right now, but we can still innovate, we can still forge ahead. It's wise to consider the type of product that you're bringing to the table. Is it still as relevant? But do you
Right.
foresee a return to normalcy, or what things do you kind of foresee changing more permanently?
Um, well, I think one thing is now that people realize that they can work from home, when you have to, that there may be a way to do that more frequently. Maybe it'll be a thing. There'll be less traffic grind. Why would you have to fight for an hour in traffic where if you work from home and left at 10 or something, and it may only take you 30 minutes to get there instead of an hour. So I think those are immediate things that come to mind about this, but we still don't know exactly what's going to happen. I really, another thing that I think about as well is that I think that so many people get their health care through their employers. And I think just like IRAs are portable, I think that the benefits of healthcare, maybe that will come because of this. That could be portable. You can go from job to job because companies may not need employees as much as people to do project work. I think there's the gig economy is a step in that way, but maybe some other skilled positions may go where you work for projects for companies instead of being an employee of a big company.
And I believe in that as well. With us both being in technology, we see the value of entertaining project-based workers and consultants to get critical initiatives through the finish line. It's almost a higher risk to hire FTEs now, and the cost, the burden of doing that. And plus in technology, so many of these individuals are transient anyways. So you hire someone and then a year later, they're making a move towards a higher paying job or a different career where they're developing new applications, particularly in the software development space. And so I could see that changing quite a bit as well. And interesting idea around portability of healthcare too. That's an interesting conversation.
I was talking with a founder earlier this week, and he has a tech, he termed it an agency, but it was a way to, just like when you want to add capacity for a peak, you go to AWS or Azure and flip a switch and you've got more computing capacity. You should be able to do that with technical workers as well. That was his idea. So I think that that's something that could come. And again, if you're not dependent on the employer for the healthcare benefits, that's what keeps a lot of people in positions like that. So they'll have more flexibility.
Well, selfishly, I love what I'm hearing because I work for a custom software and mobile app development company. And so that would keep us in business for a long time to come if that were the trend. So appreciate that encouragement.
But you're also being more flexible too, right? And that's what that's the one thing that we're learning about this is it's really hard to plan for the peak. If this coronavirus didn't require hospitalization and people taking up all the beds in the ICU, it wouldn't be as serious as it is now. So I've had conversations with people. It's not the total number of cases, it's the total number of cases that crowd out everybody else in the healthcare space, right? It's because people could, again, 85%, again, we're fighting the information war, we don't have all the data. Recent report I saw that 85% of people recover, only have mild symptoms, but those other 15% are enough to really impact. Well, we're shutting down our whole system, not our whole system, but we're quarantining everybody because we don't have better tools right now.
That's right.
Or shelter in place,
those data points as we go. Well, these aren't words that we were ever familiar with, so we're all growing accustomed to the appropriate vernacular this time, right?
Well, in one sense, it's surprising that everybody talks about what happened in 1918. I mean, it happened every 100 years. If it's another 100 years before this happens again, we'll be much better prepared for that one. But I guess we're fortunate in a way that it only happens every 100 years.
Right. And hopefully, knock on wood, that's the trend line of at least 100 years, if not longer. This has been a tough time for a lot of people. Jay, when you think about leadership and inspiration, as I mentioned before, you often have a whole list of people and thought leaders that are just on your mind. And I love receiving that from you. If you were to point leaders who are listening to this podcast towards maybe one or two inspirations or other leaders that you've been following lately, who would that be?
Well, that's a great question, Jeff. And I think one of the people that anybody that wants to be a leader should read is Simon Sinek, To Start With Why and Leaders Eat Last. Those two books just talk about how most people think of the leader, the person that beats their chest and talks the loudest, but it's really the person that has empathy. And there's another book that I read recently that says that everybody thinks the person talking controls the conversation, but it's really the person that's listening that controls the conversation. So listen to people, and those are two key things that are really important to be a good leader. So I'd start with Simon Sinek first.
That's great, Jay. And you're the type of leader that I just enjoy talking to. That's why this show is a complete blessing to me, as I get to just be inspired and to hear great words and empathetic words from someone like you. And I believe that they're worth considering. So I usually state a call to action based on the outcomes of our chat at the end here. And I feel inspired by a lot of things, but I want to put it on you to maybe think of one way as a leader to consider the times and how to respond to it. So what kind of call to action would you cast for other leaders right now?
Well, there's in the startup community where I am now, there's two leaders, just to follow up on the other question as well. I had mentioned Brad Feld, who's the head of the Foundry Group and the head of Techstars and whatever. There's so much these Ask Me Anythings or other things he gives back of his time. I was so impressed by, he took an hour of his day to answer questions from anybody in the community. And also Jason Calacanis of Angel. These are people in the space where I am now, but they're just so giving of their time. They have the podcasts and the information that they willingly give to startups and investors, because this is such a difficult process, just trying to make it easier. So let me get a shout out to those two who have been influential for me. My call to action would be, if you're a startup in the Southeast and you have an MVP or you have some traction, could be revenue, could be users, whatever, go to angelatlanta.com. There's a site for entrepreneurs. If you think that you're looking for fundraising, you go there, and there's a form that you can fill out, and we do a screening. Right now we're doing it once a month, but as things go, we're doing these virtual calls. That may change as well. But the process has been the beginning of the month, we have the companies apply, and then we have two that get in front of all the members, get a chance to raise money. But go to angelatlanta.com, click on entrepreneurs, or you can reach out to me if you have questions about the process.
And how would people get in touch with you, Jay? What's the best way?
Go to LinkedIn or put my email address in the show notes or whatever. How's that?
Great. That sounds great. Well, then I'll close here and say, hey, thank you for being on the show, Jay. It was an inspiration to talk to you, as always. I'm sure it'll be a blessing to many others. We'll be posting this on chatwithleaders.com. You can email any suggestions or questions to me and my co-hosts, Chris and Tim, at info@chatwithleaders.com. We'll certainly share it with all our social media handles as well, Chat with Leaders. Jay, thanks again for being with us today.
Hey, Jeff, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I've always enjoyed you sharing your wisdom since we've known each other. So what I've been doing since the shut-in is I've been doing the virtual fist bump with everybody.
Virtual fist bump it is. It's my pleasure, Jay, and thank you for your kind words as well.
All right. Take care, Jeff. Bye.